You know what? Screw Appa. Pen Pen is the best pet in the history of anime. Hello insects of YouTube, and welcome to the second episode of Congratulations, a Neon Genesis Evangelion Retrospective. Welcome to episode 2, where we will be diving into the second episode, which if you go according to the DVD it's called The Beast, but if you go by the Japanese title, it's called An Unfamiliar, what did I say? An Unfamiliar Face. An Unfamiliar Ceiling. An Unfamiliar Ceiling, which I forgot how good this episode really was until I finally sat down and watched it again. And sitting down and watching it again, I was just completely blown away by how much it was able to grab me and just throw me into this universe, and it fixed a lot of the problems that I had with the previous episodes, which the previous episode I had the problem with, well, why the fuck, just in terms of why the fuck did they wait until now to get Shinji into it. This one fixes it because they actually kind of bring that up in this episode, which I like. Somebody commented recently on the previous episode, which thank you for making it do so well, that you kind of spoiled this for me, even though I said at the beginning I am going to be spoiling stuff. You've been warned. But yes, I am going to be spoiling stuff. This show is really meant for if you've seen this show before, if you've seen it in its entirety before. Now, if you're doing what I'm doing and just watching it again, episode by episode, by all means. That's fantastic. But if you haven't seen Neon Genesis Evangelion before you're watching this, don't do it. Because I will ruin it for you. And I don't want to ruin it for you. I want you to enjoy it just like how I enjoyed it. Alright? And another thing I want to say about this is it's kind of become a meme now, which I'm kind of happy about it, but I said on the last episode, the opening was, Evangelion, you don't choose Evangelion, Evangelion chooses you. Though I do still stand on that opinion. You do need to be in a certain mindset to view this show. You need to be willing to want to think. You can't just watch, and I'm not knocking some of the Gundams, because I actually enjoy the ones that I've seen, I really enjoyed, but some of the Gundams are kind of just mindless action, which is great for what it's worth. That's not Evangelion at all. You need to be in a very certain mindset in order to enjoy Evangelion. In fact, you can't really even enjoy Evangelion. You have to be, 1, willing to think, 2, you have to be willing to let yourself go on an emotional roller coaster. And 3, it would also help if you had some alcohol with you. That being said, let's just go right into the characters and their progression on this episode. And I'll start off with Misato, because Misato, I think, has the most to talk about in this episode next to Shinji. I love how, at the beginning there is a battle. It opens up with the battle, but then it cuts to Shinji looking up at the ceiling, and it goes to the aftermath of this battle. We don't know what happened. I like that tactic. I like it a lot, where they kind of toy with you that there's this huge epic battle that took place, but you didn't see it, so they toy with you on what happened, and then they finally reveal it at the ending. I love that little plot device. But she's still acting human. When Ritsuko and her are in the vehicle and they're traveling along, you hear Ritsuko say, "Oh, by the way, Shinji's awake." Immediately, Misato goes, "Oh my god, how is he?" She's already harping on this. She's like, "Oh my, is he okay? How is he?" She's concerned for him. Because in the beginning, it's kind of revealed later in the episode that she thought of him more as a tool, and now suddenly she's starting to actually feel almost motherly towards this character, towards Shinji, and it's explained later on why that is, and that too is kind of fucked up and disturbing. But I'll get to that later, when it becomes more relevant. Again, she's very motherly in that aspect where she wants to take care of Shinji. She wants to make sure he's okay. And then when she finds out that he is okay and that there is no something called, and to be honest, I never really understood this, but mental contamination with the Eva, and I think it has to do with just kind of like how in Pacific Rim there was the drift, and how that could really hurt you if something goes wrong. Kind of like that in this, except instead of syncing with another human being, you're syncing with the Evangelion unit, and I think that's what it has to do with. It's very vague, and it's never really answered, but that's what I go with, and that's what I always think of whenever they talk about mental contamination, and trust me, that is brought up. The mental contamination is a huge thing, especially in episode 22. When she finds out about there being no mental contamination, because she's worried about that, because Ritsuko goes, he's having some mental problems, or he's having some mental problems, no fucking shit, it's Shinji. He's having some trouble remembering what happened, and she was like, oh my god, mental contamination? She's like, no, we didn't get any signs of that. And she goes, her shoulders drop, her demeanor changes, and she's like, oh, thank god. She's also the first to go and see Shinji, and I guess that's because she was kind of placed, even before she agrees to bring Shinji to her house, and for Shinji to call it also his home, she was kind of his guardian in this case. She's the first one to go and see Shinji, which is significant in a couple of ways. One, it's the first chance for Shinji to actually see, oh my god, hey, somebody cares for me, but I'll talk about that really when we get to Shinji more than this. But also it shows that Misato, she does care more for Shinji than she thought she was originally going to. And I'm not actually sure how she took this, or how she's kind of taking it. She takes it better on her outward, or on her outer experiences, or her outer expressions, but on the inside, I'm not sure how she feels about this because of her fucked up backstory. But it was really nice to actually see that she was the first to go see Shinji, and she was very much like, how are you doing? Are you doing okay? That's great. I'm happy to hear you're good. You know, she's actually showing, in some ways, a form of love to Shinji, and I like it. I like it a lot. She wants Shinji to be happy, and I noticed that in this episode. And the best example that I have, and it's like it puts him at ease, because he's very kind of tense, and he rarely talks throughout the majority of this episode. Actually, he has hardly any dialogue in this episode at all, but yet he has the biggest presence in it. But Misato wants to kind of put him at ease, and kind of like drop his shoulders, be able to let him drop his shoulders. And she shows him the side of Tokyo 3, which does actually put Shinji at ease for a while, because he's like, oh my god, the buildings are, oh my god, this is amazing, like, oh my god. Just like the audience, too, because I remember the first time when I saw that, I saw the buildings rising, I was like, oh hey, that's really awesome, and kind of kick-ass. And Shinji's the same way. Shinji's like, wow, look at this. And then Misato's like, this is New Tokyo 3. You're defending this, Shinji. You saved us. You protected this, which is awesome. And I honestly think it kind of worked, because if you look at it from this point on, Shinji, despite still being really inverse about himself and about everybody else, he puts on kind of like this uneasy kind of smile. But it's a beginning, it's a start. You can argue if it goes anywhere or not. You can. But it's good to see this right now. It's good to see that he's kind of loosening up. Not fully, but it's starting. And this was a great catalyst for it. And Misato really was the one that was able to push Shinji forward and get him to kind of be like that. I also like how when we arrive at Misato's apartment, it's a fucking mess. It's a fucking pigsty, kind of like my room. And to me, that only makes her more human, because I'm like, god, she really is just a kid out of college. That just works so well. I do. I think that just, it adds more to her character without really much for dialogue to be said. And it just works. It just makes me like her even more, because she likes to drink, she likes to party, she likes to have fun. She can't cook for shit, which I think is a nice little character thing, and when we find out that Shinji actually knows how to cook, you can call him bitch even more then. but it just makes their pairing a little bit better, or their relationship together a little bit better. I like it. I like it how the room is a complete mess, and because she can't cook for shit, everything's made in the microwave, and there's a joke where it goes ding, where you just see the microwave go ding, and you just know immediately what's happening. It's nothing but ramen, it's nothing but instant shit. That kind of crap. And speaking of which, why she was making that was because she also wanted to make Shinji feel welcome at home. Because now Misato is going to be the guardian. Not just a guardian, the guardian for Shinji. She's going to be the one making sure he goes to school. She's going to be the one making sure he feels okay. That kind of shit. And it's really also now his home. And it's a great moment where Shinji goes home, and then all of a sudden she looks at him and says, "Welcome home, Shinji." That's a great scene. That's probably one of my favorite parts in this episode. If not my favorite. No, I know what my favorite part is, and fortunately it's depressing. But, again, I just really like Misato. She likes to drink, she likes to have fun, but she's lazy. She kind of doesn't want to work, even though she's really probably, arguably, the strongest or the most willing to do shit character in the frickin' series. But yet, on a human level, she's still like, I don't want to clean this shit up. Fuck, that's work. You know? And I just love that about her. Shinji, onto Shinji. There's actually quite a bit to say about him. As a shocker, there's a lot to say about pussy. I mean, Shinji. What I like about it is the opening of the episode opens up literally right where episode 1 finishes off, and I'm not going to talk about the fight specifically yet, but what I like about it is that Shinji is at least trying. He is trying. He doesn't know how to pilot the Eva, but he's trying, because they're first like, okay, Shinji, you need to focus on walking. Make the Eva walk. And he actually kind of starts succeeding it, but of course he messes up, which makes him panic and brings up more of that introverted selfishness, that introversion that he's based on, that mental disorder from the DSM-4 where he's based on, which I'll get into a little later. It just makes him panic even more because he's already messed up. He hasn't even fought the damn thing. He's already messed up. Crap, what are they thinking? And all this is going through his mind, and of course this messes up how the Eva works and everything like that, and I think that was a nice little touch, but it was good to see that he was at least trying at the beginning. I love it when he wakes up in the hospital. Literally, it just cuts. And suddenly he's waking up in a hospital like he was having a dream, and he looks up at the ceiling, he's like, this is unfamiliar. This is an unfamiliar ceiling, the name of the episode, and all of a sudden he just kind of lays there and he's like, and this happens later when he goes into, when he's sleeping in Misato's house for the first time, but he goes, another unrecognizable ceiling. Granted, all the houses in Tokyo are like that, which just, again, starts alluding to his really fucked up and tragic backstory with him, especially him and his father. And I'm not going to get into that right now either, because that on its own could technically be its own video. In fact, several people have already talked about the relationship with him and Gendo and how it's fucked up Shinji's entire life. But it also made me, it also made me start feeling for Shinji, and it made me really realize that this kid really has been on his own his entire fucking life. He's used to waking up and not seeing a ceiling. He's been on his own this forever. And also, I like the shot where he's finally up and about and he's walking around. And at first I was like, what the fuck is the point of this scene? But it clicked with me on this viewing. He looks at his hand and he remembers how it hurt during the battle, or how he thought he hurt during the battle, and it finally clicked in me that he's looking at it because there's no marks on his hand. It hurt bad. Why aren't there any scars? Why aren't there cuts? Why aren't there bruises? And he's thinking about that, and it finally clicked on this viewing. And then I love it how when he finally goes back to Nerve HQ, they say you're going to have your own room like the other pilots wind up having. You're going to have your own room, and you're going to be all alone. And Shinji's like, I like being all alone. I'd rather be all alone. And Misato sees this, and actually I think it's kind of selfish that she did this, to be honest. And she rips Shinji away from that and says, nope, you're living with me, I'm taking care of you. And I think that has to do with the elevator scene, which I will talk about when I start speaking about Gendo. Which the elevator scene is my favorite scene in the in this episode. Shinji loves being alone, and that again just goes into that introversion. His entire persona is, I keep to myself. This is me. I'm a loner. This is me. This is what I do. No one else does it. This is me. And he almost wants to fight Misato, but he's afraid to hurt Misato and have her walk away, which just makes it even more complex when you look at it. It's like he really wants to be alone, but Misato really wants him there, and so he doesn't quite want to hurt Misato, but yet he also knows that if he hurts Misato, Misato might hurt him, and it's just this huge circle, okay? It's just this huge, giant motherfucking circle of emotions and feelings that are going on, which I think makes Evangelion work so good as a whole. And especially, and I think that's just some of the genius of Hideaki Anno, is just how he is able to make all these emotions kind of go full circle, or make all these emotions just go in circles, as well as make characters kind of parallel each other. And though they might be extreme different versions of that same parallel, they still are next to each other. They still kind of connect, they still line up, and I like that, and that's what I think is the genius about this show. I also like that line where Shinji finally goes in and Misato's like, your stuff has already been delivered, yada yada yada, and he doesn't enter the room right off, or the apartment right off, but Misato turns around and is like, this is your home now, and Shinji's like, I'm home? And Misato goes, welcome home, and then Shinji steps in, and then he looks around, he actually does have a small smile, because he's never had this before, this is a first for him, and he's finally like, I'm home. And he kind of lets that sink in for a while, and it really comes to fruition in the bath scene, or in the bathtub scene, which I have to say, it's an Evangelion gag, because they do it in the movie too, where the scene where Shinji meets Pen for the first time, which I'll talk about Pen a little later. But, because this is the first episode we see Pen. I love Pen. Where Shinji comes bursting out of the bathroom, and he's butt-ass naked, and there's like a beer can covering his dick, and then all of a sudden she moves that, and there's like a thing of toothpicks, and it's even smaller than you think it is, and I don't know why. I shouldn't be laughing at that as much as I do, but every time I see that gag, I laugh. In fact, that's something on Evangelion 2.0 when we meet Asuka that I fell in love with, was that they also did it with her, and they had a straw covering her tits, and it was so funny. There's just something about, and I'm not a big fan of that kind of humor either, but I think it worked. It just made me laugh, and I thought the animation worked, and it just always makes me laugh every time I see it. I don't care how many times I will see it, I always laugh. This also is the episode that introduces us to his tape player. Now that tape player plays a major role further on, and plays a major part of Shinji's character. And I actually blame the tape player for a lot of Shinji's lack of progression. But I'm not going to get into why now. I'm going to get into why later, again, when it becomes more prevalent. On to Gendo. Gendo will always be my favorite character, and this is no exception. He's very quiet during the council meeting, which is also our first introduction to Seele, which I'll talk about them a little later. And when he's talking, what I like about it is he's still very quiet, or he's still very reserved in his Gendo posture. He's speaking, right? He's speaking quietly, and you can tell he knows what's up. And during the Seele meeting, when the head of Seele, or the head of the council at this point, I'm going to call him Seele because that's what they are, when the head disappears and says humanity has finally reached its end, and Gendo goes, I know, you can tell Gendo is hiding something, or Gendo is planning something of his own agenda, going against the council, going against Seele. And I like that, because it just makes me want to know more about him. It makes me want to know, what the fuck is he thinking? I want to jump into this guy's brain, and this is the one character that we never really do. And it's like Hideaki Anno knew that people were going to be intrigued by Gendo, and he said, because of that, I'm never going to let you jump into his brain until End of Eva, which is a really sad scene. Well, it's actually not a sad scene when you think about it. The part that I'm talking about in End of Eva, it's actually kind of uplifting. But I'm not going to get into why yet. I'll get to that when I actually talk about End of Eva. This is also the first time we hear the term instrumentality project, and we have no idea what it is because how they speak about it is very cryptic. But let me tell you, when we find out what it is, and I'll talk about it later, probably in the end of Eva, because I can already tell at the end of Eva thing is going to be this huge long video where I do nothing but talk about the religious symbolism and just all the nooks and crannies behind Eva. But this is the first time we hear about the instrumentality project, and I want to know what it is. And again, I think this is what Evangelion does extremely well. And even the Rebuild movies, I think, did this pretty good. Was they made me want to know what this thing is. They made me want to know more. They made me want to learn about this universe. And just in episode 2 alone, I want to know that. I want to know what's coming next. And that's, to me, the sign of a good show, and Eva is no exception to that. Now let me talk about the elevator scene. It's so short, but yet it carries the entire fucking episode. It really does. Not the fight, it's this scene. Misato and Shinji have just arrived at Nerve, and they press the button to the elevator, and when the elevator doors open, Gendo is standing there. Now what's interesting to me is the look on Gendo's face. The look on Gendo's face is one of pure disgust, and it's directed directly at Shinji. He doesn't look at Misato, he looks at Shinji. And what's interesting about this also is that Shinji looks at him for a while and he looks hurt and almost angry, but suddenly he too looks away. And Gendo sees this. And Gendo and Shinji and Misato do not get on the elevator because of it. Shinji refuses to be in the same room as his father Gendo, and Gendo refuses to be in the same room as his son Shinji. And again, that goes into this whole circle of emotions kind of thing going on where everything comes around, what goes around comes around kind of deal. Because one character's hatred towards the other one has formed a hatred for him, and it's just this round circle thing. And it really is the best scene just because of the looks that the characters give. And Misato knows something's going on. I love Misato's reaction to this because she says nothing, but she lets them, she doesn't say, okay Shinji, let's get on the elevator. She waits with Shinji. She stays with Shinji and doesn't force him to get on that elevator with his father. And I like that because I think it was at that moment there that she realized that she really is starting to care for Shinji and that this could be her opportunity. Kind of selfish, but still I like it. I like the motivation. This could be her chance to kind of prove herself as a woman and a mother. And I really like that. I should have brought that up when I was talking about Misato, but it was more prevalent with Gendo, so that's why I'm talking about it now. And that's probably, it is my favorite scene on the second episode. It really is. Also, what I like is during the battle, is a really nice little thing. When Eva 01 goes berserk, you can tell that Gendo was expecting this to happen, which again goes into answering my complaints with the first episode, because he gives this tiny smile, and Fuyutsuki's doing the same thing. Fuyutsuki's like, oh, I knew this was going to happen. This just proves that we were going to win. I knew this was going to happen. I'm glad it happened. Thundering. And I liked it. I liked it. You like my dog in the background? Very professional, right? Now, Ritsuko actually has some more character in this episode, too, and she actually, because in the first episode you kind of got the idea that she was probably a hard-ass, and she still kind of is a hard-ass, but you can tell that she's at least human in this episode. Because I love it during the scene with the rebuilding. She's up in this gigantic, big-ass motherfucking truck that would make a lot of hicks that live up here jealous. And Misato's down on the ground, and Misato's actually being very optimistic. She's like, oh yeah, we can rebuild, we can do this, yeah, I'm pretty sure we can fix the Eva. Everything's gonna work out. And then Ritsuko says the line, are you always such an optimist? And here's what I got out of that line. One, she's a little jealous of Misato for being able to stay upbeat and positive, which in reality Misato is really not, and she's just putting on a persona. But she also admires her. She also is like, I can kind of look up to you, Misato. In fact, that kind of complements to the friendship that winds up forming between the two, because believe it or not, they actually are really close friends. especially in episode 23. Of course, it's really disturbing, but I'll get into that later. But again, I also like how it's just another mixture of emotions and just makes these characters the more human. Another reason why I like Eva so much. And then when Misato does say something else back to that positive, she's like, sometimes it makes things either. She goes, it helps to hear things like that from you. Which again just goes into leaning more towards the admiration side. It's pretty obvious at this point that Ritsuko has a level of respect for Misato. Now at this point you can start inferencing that, hey, she's maybe a little jealous, but she admires the living shit out of Misato because of how upbeat she's willing to at least play herself. And Ritsuko could never have that. She never could, and when you find out why, it's very justable. Very, very justable. But we'll get into that when we actually find out about Ritsuko's backstory. And then also, I love it, we finally get a scene with her and Gendo together in the same room. Just them. And it's also a great way to introduce the Eva Unit 0, the first Eva, that I really like that. But it also foreshadows a past relationship or current, hint hint, between her and Gendo, because it's also interesting to note that Gendo never talks very casual to anybody, period. He's very much like, these are the facts, these are what we're going to do, speaks very in a monotone voice, and very cryptic. Ritsuko is trying to, I think, do what Misato was doing to Shinji. Ritsuko is trying to lighten up the mood. Ritsuko is speaking to Gendo in a rather casual tone. She's not saying sir, she's not saying commander, she's not saying whatever Gendo is. She's going up to him and being like, hey, how are you? What's up, man? Yo, what's be the haps in the hood? Yo, okay, maybe not that quite, maybe not that black, but, or in my case, white, but you get my point. And it doesn't work on Gendo, which I can tell annoys Ritsuko too. I like that. What I like about this episode as a whole, the fight is fucking phenomenal. Oh my god, if there's anything that, I'm going to say this a lot, but Evangelion knows how to shoot its fight scenes. Evangelion knows how to make fight scenes. Even though they had like no money to do this, they were very creative with how they shot it, how they lit it, and how they executed it. And this is no exception. I mean, considering that this has nothing compared to some of the other Eva fights, or some of the other Angel versus Eva fights that are coming up in future episodes, this one was still entertaining as fuck. We still had a giant-ass mech fighting a kaiju-like monster. That was entertaining as all hell, and everyone knows I'm a huge kaiju fan. And love that kind of shit. It's very violent. That's another thing that kind of stands out about Eva. Eva at first presents itself as just a stereotypical mech show. Mechs fight giant monsters. The mechs have to be piloted by some whiny little kid because it's a fucking anime. And that's what animes fucking do. It's really raining out. Anyways, and it kind of works at first. That's exactly what comes across. However, in full reality, Eva is a lot more than that. Eva is not meant for kids. And in the first episode, it can kind of be given off that it's kind of kid-like, it's kind of lighthearted, and even this episode to some extent. But this fight scene really starts suggesting, because you have the Eva Unit 01 ripping the rib-like things out of the Angel. You have him like stabbing the little red orb that each Angel has. That's the life source for the Angel. And it's very violent and bloody and freaking, oh my god. When the Angel breaks the Eva's arm. First off, I love the designs of the Eva. Fucking love the designs of the Eva, but that's probably a different video altogether. When it breaks his arm, you see it hurts Shinji because of the synchronization that goes on with him and the mech. I love that hit, and he's clearly hurt, and already the stakes are raised because of that, and I like that a lot. And it really made me feel uncomfortable. In fact, that's something Evangelion prides itself on, is making you feel uncomfortable, and this fight already makes you feel that way. It works. In fact, even when the Eva goes berserk, which is great foreshadowing, it does this like blood-curdling scream, And that scream still gives me chills every time I hear it, and not the good kind of chills. It gives me the chills like, I never want to hear that again. But of course I will hear it again because I fucking love the show. It gives me the same feeling as the UFO thing before it turns into Orga in Godzilla 2000. And again, it's just very unnerving, the imagery is very unnerving, very violent, very gritty, and well executed, but not what you'd expect from a show that you think is going to be meant for kids. And it turns out not to be meant for kids, but we don't know that yet. I love the mysterious atmosphere that they're presenting with this in terms of the lighting. Like, I love the design of Nerve HQ where they're monitoring everything. I always love that design. I love how it's laid out. I love the lighting. We also get a glimpse at some of the other side characters that are in Nerve, though we don't know their names yet, and we don't really get a personality, but we finally get to kind of see them in this episode, and I can't wait to start talking about them because they're actually some really good, likable characters. Then, of course, there's Seele, which already they creep me out, but when they actually start turning into those monolith-looking thingies, they creep me out even more, but that's for a later video. Also, I love the design of New Tokyo 3, how they rise out of ground, how they do that. The reason why they do that is because it's to protect them against angels. Like, ever since Second, we learned that there's something called, or that everyone has been preparing for the angels for a long time, and this is what they've done to prepare, is that they've completely rebuilt Tokyo. We still don't know quite what happens, and we'll get into that when we actually find out on the show, and I'll talk about it then more in depth. But I love how this universe set it up. It's like, this is the defense force when the angels arrived. We don't know when the angels are going to arrive, but we know they are going to arrive, and this is how we're going to prepare for it. And I actually like how they actually literally gave a fucking prepared. You know how there's some movies, including mine, like in Mass Effect 3, the entire time they haven't prepared for the Reapers. On this one, it's kind of the same scenario, but they prepared. And because of that, they're probably going to save a lot of lives. There's also, again, a lot of foreshadowing in this episode, like when Misato and Shinji are in the store buying shit for the party, quote-unquote party, instant party, that they're going to have at Misato's house. You hear dialogue of people saying, yeah, we're moving out. We're moving out. After that battle, we're fucking moving out. And that has a lot of foreshadow with a lot of the quote-unquote friends, especially Toji, that Shinji makes in school, and I thought that was a very nice touch. Episode 2, ladies and gentlemen, episode 2. I hope you enjoy. Please stay tuned for the next episode, and sayonara.